Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Queen's Reading Room Festival. Welcome to the Carriage House here at Chatsworth. I hope you're all having a fabulous day. I'm sure all of us here for this session can only really associate this place with Pride and Prejudice and Darcy. It is kind of Darcy's house after all. And so to be here today with two absolute titans of the genre is such an honour and such a privilege. We're going to be having a great chat, all things Bridget, all things Clarke, etc., etc. I really can't wait. We're going to have lots and lots of audience Q&A, so we'll start with a chat, but do have a think about what you want to ask, and we'll get through as many as we possibly can today. Now, I should start, I think, as we are here, by talking about Pride and Prejudice, and by talking about Jane Austen, and obviously, Bridget Jones came about because of Mr. Darcy, or tell us about what Jane Austen meant to you and how you arrived with the plot.
Well, they're two separate things, really, because Jojo and I both worked on the independent newspaper.
Yeah.
And I was broke, and the news editor asked me to write a column as myself, and I said no, but I will make someone up. And so I wrote it anonymously. And I didn't tell anyone it was me because I thought it was too silly. But after about 6 weeks, my really good friend said, "Have you read this column, Bridget Jones?" I said, "What do you think?" She said, "I think it's really funny." So I went, "Tracy, it's me." And then just have showed off about it ever since. But I was writing a second novel, which was kind of unreadable, about cultural divides in the Caribbean. And my editor just said, "Look, Helen, this book is really boring." And I said, "Yeah, I know." And so she said, "Why don't you take these Bridget columns and make them into a book?"
Yeah.
But I didn't have a plot, and Pride and Prejudice was showing on the BBC at the time. So I thought, well, I'll just take that plot because it's really good. And I thought Jane Austen wouldn't mind, and anyway, she's dead. So Jane Austen means a lot to me as a writer.
Yeah.
You know, I believe one of the finest novelists who've ever lived, but also because I nicked her plot. So it's twofold.
And we discovered just now that there's a very funny story. So you also, Jojo, worked at The Independent.
Yes, as Helen said, I was on the grubby end. I was a news reporter, and
She
Helen
was in the
rarefied.
deep end.
But the news editor in question, a chap called Charlie Ledbetter, who has apparently dined out on Helen's success ever since, I was a night reporter, which was a pretty dreadful job. It basically involved fielding people with mental health problems who rang up to tell me that various aliens were coming, or, you know, famous people had died when they hadn't. Anyway, and he came up to me one night and he said, I want The Independent to do a column about a kind of young woman in the city. Would you be interested? And I went, yeah. And then it went in and out of my head like that. And then someone called Helen Fielding in a different department took that ball, ran with it, and did the most amazing job, far better than I could have done. But I only told Helen that story today.
I had no idea.
And
but what I want to know is how many other people did he ask before he got to me?
And tell us, how do you think your time working for The Independent, working as journalists, informed your writing? I mean, it must have helped your social observation, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think
the first thing it does is it teaches you to see stories, which sounds like a nothing skill, but you'll be amazed how many people exist in the world set to broadcast instead of receive. I'm sure we all know people like that. And what journalism training teaches you is to see stories in any environment. You know, why is the curtain at number 42 always shut? Why is there somebody sitting in the back of that car who hasn't moved for 3 days? Why, you know, there's just stuff I always say I could sit two people from any audience down in front of me for 2 hours and get 2 novels out of them minimum, because everybody has the weird family member who doesn't talk to the other family member, or the big secret in the family that nobody ever talks about, or, you know, everybody has some conflict or secret thing going on that you could build something from. So that, and the ability to keep to deadlines, are the
Yeah.
two things that it taught me. I don't know about you, Helen, but
I
massively
actually never
disappointed.
learnt to keep to deadlines. In fact, one time the paper came out with a hole in it because I'd pushed it so close to the wire that there wasn't a column. I'm terrible at deadlines. But I think I agree with what you say, and I think you lose your ego because you get used to being cut by the inch on a newspaper, and you find your voice. But also for me, I don't know about you, but I collect like a magpie.
Yeah.
I collect funny stories, like things that, I mean, like for example, this summer, I had this thing where I was sunbathing out the back, just in underwear, and the Amazon man came to the front. So I just put a towel around me, got the package, and the door shut behind me. So I was left just in underwear and a towel with no key and no phone. So I didn't know what to do, so I went round to my friend's house, who was around the corner. I might have come to your house, actually, if I'd known. And the husband let me in because he was working from home. And he said, well, just come and sit at the back with me. And then there was a key in the lock, and my friend came home. So I was in her house in underwear and a towel without explanation. And if she hadn't been such a good friend, it would have been terrible. But I just keep a file of stuff that happens like that you can, when you look at it, you can see how it happened.
Yeah.
And I always find with the books being made into films, they always try and make her just sort of fall over. And it's not like that with the things that happened to Bridget. There's a reason why it happened. She's not just stupid. I mean, okay, maybe I should have taken the key out. But, anybody would do that, wouldn't they? They'd just run out, and you could see why everything happens.
Yeah.
So I think both you and I are quite observational, aren't we? Everything's got some kernel of truth at the bottom of it, which is why it's what makes it funny.
Well, it's Nora Ephron's Everything is Material. I mean, especially with the
Everything's
dark
material.
stuff. Helen and I were just saying that we do the occasional dog walk together. And what writers do, or what we do, definitely, is we tell each other terrible, terrible things that have happened to us and then package it up for laughs. So we make each other laugh through trauma. And I think that's very English for a start, but I also think it's possibly why our books have done all right, because I think it's that thing of making the unpalatable palatable.
I think it's the way that women relate to each other, in that you don't want the friend who comes home and says, darling, I've had a marvellous day and I'm so thin and successful, isn't it wonderful? You want the friend that says, you won't believe what I've just done, get me a glass of wine now. And it's that thing of processing life with your women friends, isn't it? And I mean, that's why we were saying before about how patronising it is when people talk about women's fiction, because even Jane Austen, the thing that first struck me about her when I first read her when I was 15 is that she was writing about real women's lives and all the little preoccupations. And even though they were like tiny, like she was writing on a bit of ivory, you just understood so much about the wars that were going on, the economics of, a woman not having any choice.
Yeah.
Your choice was to say yes or no to a rich man unless you were a widow or something. And there's so much you learn, but it looks like, it's like a little duck bobbing along, but underneath the legs are working really hard. I mean, she was no fool, Jane Austen, was she?
I mean, this is what I think, so many of us in this room will be frustrated by. Your work is often called chick lit or romance, or it's sort of given a label that doesn't reflect the depth. I mean, to be as funny as both of you are takes a lot of art and intelligence, and I mean, it must drive you mad, right?
No, I have, the term chick lit makes me grind my teeth. It's really tricky, but I always find it really interesting when people assume our books are very easy to adapt, because, especially, by male scriptwriters, because they think that everything's just happening on the surface. But actually there's real scaffold under there. There are real life problems. There are characters that we've built and dilemmas that we have plotted. And when my books have been optioned, I've quite frequently been asked to do a pass, shoved off the project, brought back on when they've paid somebody 10 times as much as they've paid me to rewrite it, and then worked out that nothing's hanging together. And it's because, you know, Lee Child talks about this from a male perspective because of his Jack Reacher books. Everyone thinks they can write Jack Reacher.
Yeah.
They can't. It actually takes some skill to write books that are readable and appear simple on the surface. There are big underpinnings and thoughts underneath what he does, and likewise with what we do. And I had an expression yesterday which really astonished me, which is, there is no such thing as men's fiction. And I thought, oh my God, I've been describing what I do, for want of a better term, as women's fiction for years. Why is there no men's fiction? Like, you would.
No, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. So, yes,
Yeah.
maybe we start a movement today. Will you
It's
ride with
people's.
us? Yeah.
No, but I think the thing is that there's sort of only 10 stories, we know that.
Yes.
And say Jane Austen chose a romantic comedy, a rom-com structure is one of those stories. So the fact that you choose that as your structure doesn't mean that it's not a literary book.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the whole movie thing that's one of the things we talk about, isn't it? Because I find it's like being a plumber. You get in these meetings and everyone's saying, why doesn't this be that? And it's like being a plumber where they're designing a bathroom and, you know, they're saying, well, we want to put the toilet over there. And I'm like, there isn't a soil pipe over there. But it is hard. You know, it's like you've got to hand over your baby. But then when it gets to be a teenager and they're giving it crystal meth, that's the moment you want to step in and say, no, we need to make some changes here. But it is, it's a whole thing, isn't it? Yeah. Being adapted.
How deeply involved are you in the Bridget adaptations?
Well, I am that parent.
Yeah.
I think the second one I didn't write the original script, but the other three, the first one, the third one, and this last one, Mad About the Boy, that was very personal because I wrote the script in the pandemic and our family had lost people. My kids had lost their dad, but so had loads of people. And I just thought it was really interesting how someone who's funny and light and joyful like Bridget, how does someone like that cope when something really dark happens? You know, life has its white notes, life has its black notes. And for me, that was a really interesting piece of writing to do, that you're sort of playing with comedy and tragedy. I think they're both the same thing, actually. And our family certainly, you know, there's a lot of comedy writers in the family, so there was no joke too dark. And that was what helped us get through, really. So that's a very long-winded answer. But yeah, I do start most of them off. And then, same as Jojo, at some point, you get sacked. And then they say, can you come back and fix it? And you're like, oh, God, okay. So it's always a little bit like that. But
I think it's so interesting. You know, you mentioned there the light and the dark, and I mean, Mad About the Boy, the way that it makes you absolutely bawl your eyes out and also laugh out loud. And there's a kind of commonality there with your latest book, We All Live Here, which did exactly the same to me recently when I read it.
Yeah, me too. I
think it's your funniest book yet, isn't it?
Yeah, I think as the world gets more challenging, I turn more to humour. Because firstly, it's what I want to read. If an author can make me laugh, I'm theirs for life. Like, I will go back to anything that they... You know, the Catherine Heine book, Standard Deviation, made me laugh so loudly on a plane that my children disowned me. And as a result, I've read everything she's ever written, because I love that thing of being made to feel something, especially if it's cheerful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think, what's nicer than making people a bit happier? Like, you can still have depth in the story, like you were talking about with Mad About the Boy. You can still make bad things happen, but I think I love that English thing of there's no humour too dark, and I don't know if it exists in other countries to the same extent. But you know, you want the really good jokes, you go to the emergency services. Like they have every single terrible joke because that's how we cope. So yeah, let's just, when I go really dark, you'll know, when I write my thriller, you'll know that the world is in a great place. Yeah.
But you're equally not, you're equally, you know, quite prepared to put your reader through a lot. I mean, Me Before You.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Blooming heck.
No, well, Me Before You is a funny one because that came out of real life. I had two people close to me who had life-limiting, I don't know how to put it, illnesses. Well, they both had multiple sclerosis, and they were both at end stage. And if you look after somebody whose life has very little hope to offer it, and no dignity and no comfort, and you find yourself asking questions all the time about how do I make this person's life better? And then some of the stupid things that happen, like, you know, my dad caught me, my aunt who had MS didn't want to eat vegetables, and my dad caught me mushing carrots into her beef to feed her, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm making sure she gets her vegetables." And he was like, "She can live on after eights at this point. Like, let her have what are you trying to do?" And I think it's that thing, like, especially if you're a mum, you just have this idea that somehow you must fix things and make things. There was no fixing it. Let her live off after eights, which was what she actually wanted.
Yeah.
But that humour and tragedy, the mix of it, came from personal experience. Because there were so many incidences like that, but also from a real life story, a news story about a young man who had made that choice, and I found it incomprehensible. I couldn't understand how his parents would have gone along with it, and I think, you know, real life stories are always the most fascinating and also the least believable, and those two things happening at the same time are what inspired that book.
And both of you write very real women. I mean, when Bridget Jones came out, she was so refreshingly normal, you know, messing things up. And I think it's given, when we read your work, it gives us a permission to not be perfect all the time and to mess things up a little bit. Were you consciously trying to create a new kind of heroine when you created Bridget Jones? No.
The thing was, when I was writing it, I thought no one would read it. I thought it would last for 6 weeks and then it would be stopped because it was too silly. And I think the fact that no one was paying attention freed me up to be emotionally honest about what was actually going on as a single woman in her 30s. Because at that time, now we've got the expression singleton, which I thought I came up with, but it was P.G. Wodehouse. But then, if you were single in your 30s, there was this air of Miss Havisham and shelves and spinning wheels and failure hanging around you, and cats. And if you went to, you know, if I went up to mum and dad's, all the Uncle Jeffreys would be sort of, how's your love life then? And part with your bunny tail and all that stuff. So but it was actually quite painful as well. You did feel like there'd been a mistake, which was all wrong, because there were lots of reasons why women were single in their 30s. So I think it just gave me the opportunity to be emotionally honest and make silly jokes. And it really surprised me that so many people identified with it. And I didn't understand why. You know, I went on book tours to Japan, and these women would come up who were tiny and perfect, and they identified with it. And I thought, there really is something at the bottom of this, which is, it's a global thing, that there's a gap between how we all feel we're expected to be and how we really are. And it's just getting bigger and bigger with social media. So it wasn't a sociological thing I was trying to do. It came over my shoulder. I wasn't expecting it at all. But for that reason, it was authentic. So I think maybe that was what it was.
Jojo, do you think Helen's work has given other female authors permission write women more honestly?
Oh, God, completely. I mean, I grew up on a diet of bonkbusters, or things like Lace, where everybody looked like Joan Collins and said things like, what do you think of that bitch? And, but everybody was aspirational. Everybody wore kind of shoulder pads, and it was all a bit Dallas and Dynasty, and but everyone then built a huge shopping empire or something. And there weren't many characters who were just ordinary. In fact, one of my favorite books growing up was National Velvet, which has, forget the film, the book is far more interesting, but it had at its heart this just very ordinary little girl, bit sickly, bit daft, quirky, who achieved something extraordinary. And it's interesting you saying that there was this sort of weird universal appeal that you hadn't realized you were doing, because I remember when Me Before You came out, my dad said, well, that'll kill your career stone dead. And I was like, oh, okay. And he said, well, no one's going to buy it in a Catholic country. You're going to upset an awful lot of people, which, frankly, I didn't until the film came out, but that's a whole other story. But what was really interesting is the same thing happened, which is, at first, lots of British young women identified with her. And I realized it wasn't the quirky clothes. It was that sense of having got to a certain age and not quite being sure who you should be or what you should be doing, because we're all encouraged to believe that we should be on a path, and most of us don't know what on earth we're doing by 26. And she was somehow working at a cafe and then gets made and isn't quite sure who she is, and it takes somebody else to kind of prod her a bit and go, well, think about it. You don't actually have all the time in the world to work it out. And then the surprising thing to me was the same thing. I was having girls in Korea, South Korea, tell me that this was their story. And then, all the Roman Catholic countries, which amazed me. But it's that thing. You suddenly realize this isn't a controversial book. This is just a book about human beings going through unusual experiences and doing their best to get through.
Yeah.
And when you have characters who are fallible and messy and make mistakes, I would say, apart from the psychopaths and the sociopaths, 90% of the readers are going to go, oh yeah, there I am.
Yeah.
There's me. Yeah.
What do you make, Helen, of, I suppose, the kind of Gen Z reaction to Bridget Jones today? Does it make you laugh?
Well, they would laugh at you for saying Gen Z because you're supposed to say Gen Z. I mean, it's terrifying. I live with them. It's terrifying. You have to be so careful what you say. But actually, I love the Gen Zs.
Yeah.
And I think they're very Bridget-y. There is a new audience of 18 to 25-year-old girls who love her. And so when I do readings and things, it's often their mums and the daughters. But I think it's because they identify with the insecurity, the body image thing. But at the same time, they feel guilty for feeling worried about that because of body positivity. So they've kind of got a double dose of that anxiety. And also what I find sweet when the girls around my house is that they're very like Bridget. So, all those scenes where she's in her penguin pajamas with the ice cream and the Chardonnay and all that sort of cozy, comforty things, they do the same thing. They have their sort of bunny ears, but they have healthy things like protein powder and green tea and collagen, fish collagen and stuff like that. But it's still the same thing. They're still in their fluffy pajamas and they're still making a little safe cocoon with their friends where you sort of laugh about things and make the world shrink down to your community and your sense of humor and kindness and values and all those things. And I think as the world gets scarier and scarier out there, then everybody is drawn to that sort of comfort.
I've just realized something as you've said that, because we've both been lucky enough to create heroines who people identified with. But I think one of the really important attractions of both Bridget and Louisa Clarke is their kindness. And kindness was deeply unfashionable for so long. But you wouldn't get Bridget being mean to somebody. She's a sweetheart.
No, or Louisa. I mean, they wouldn't blame anyone else except themselves for things going. But I think, it sounds stupid,
Go on.
I always remember on newspapers, it was always the bogus phenomenon. Whatever happened to the dining room? Suddenly there are more dining rooms everywhere. Do you remember we used to do that? And I was just about to say, kindness is in. And which is the sort of thing that...
It's the new black.
It's the new black. Kindness is the new badness or something. But I do think this young generation, the Gen Zs, I think kindness and values are very important to them. I mean, you can't generalize like that about whole generations, but what I observe with the ones that come round our house is that they are very purposeful and they are thinking about community and the world. And I think it'd be really interesting when a lot of Gen Zs start to write novels. I think they'll be really good novels.
Very, very interesting. I have so many more questions for Helen and Jojo, but I shan't hog them. Who has a question? And let's get a microphone to you. Pop your hand up. We've got one just here.
Well done for being brave.
I admit it is slightly a personal question. I hope everyone can forgive me that. So I wanted to be an author from being about 4 years old, and I've always stuck with that. And then I got to being about 10 and thought, actually, that's probably not going to be quite so easy. And I started taking an interest in my local newspaper. So I've now been a journalist for 11 years, but I still haven't lost the desire to be an author. What advice would you both give to me to make that transition like you did so wonderfully?
After you, Darth.
Oh, okay. Well, in my case, it would be persistence, because I wrote 3 books while I was a journalist that nobody was interested in publishing, and so it took me till number 4, and then I had to write another 8 before I had a bestseller. So, yeah, just be persistent, and also kind of be a bit stubborn and single-minded. I think resilience and stubbornness are really important traits. So many people can write, loads of people can write, but so few people actually have the tenacity to keep going in the face of rejection especially. And even when you're successful, we've been talking about this, you will write books that don't work, you will write books that get badly reviewed, you will get books that, you know, you give up on at 30,000 words. And so much, you know, writing, like so much of life, is about rolling with the punches, I guess. So, you know, just journalism is a great springboard because you've already got a bit of a name and you've already, you know, worked on your craft. So just do it.
I mean, I think I'm a bit less disciplined than you, because my first book was written for Mills and Boon,
Ooh,
and it was called Fires of Zanzibar. And I got a rejection letter which said, "We are sorry, but neither your characters nor your story are up to the high standards demanded by the Mills and Boon reader." But when I read it back, it was a doctor and nurse romance set in a refugee camp, and it ended with the doctor pulling the nurse roughly to him, and she looked up at him tremblingly, and he said, "It's all right, it isn't a snake." And so I think they thought I wasn't taking it seriously, but I was. I really was. And I didn't write again for 7 years. I was so upset. I just did journalism. But no, I agree, persistence. But also I think that you have to find your voice. I think that's how journalism helps. And I don't think it's a good idea to write a whole book like Fires of Zanzibar. I think just write a few chapters, because then you don't feel so sad if they reject it. And then just write another one. I've got a ton of books I've thrown away, haven't you?
Yeah,
Just
so many.
3 chapters in, I'm just like,
It's not working. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although now I really, really want to read Fires of Zanzibar. Please have it. Please can you message it to me?
Very good. It's really good.
Was it true, Jojo, that Me Before You was rejected?
I was with another publisher. They had been very tolerant in that they had taken me on, and 8 books later I had barely even got close to troubling the bestseller list. And so when I pitched them this idea about a man who wants to die and the carer who decides to change his mind, their expression went something like, and I'll just be honest, they offered me 1/6 of what I had been getting as an advance. And meanwhile, Penguin Michael Joseph, who had been making tentative advances in my direction, they said, well, we can't pay you any more, but I tell you, this is what we would do with you, and this is how we would do it, and this is what we would put on the cover. And they were so full of enthusiasm and confident, and they said, this is the book that we'll use as a stepping stone to get you back into the supermarkets, because at that point, supermarkets weren't even stocking me. And they said afterwards, even we didn't have any clue what was going to happen. It just took off.
Well, you then had, I think at one point, 3 New York Times bestsellers at #1, didn't you? On the back of that. So
yeah, and there was a period where there were 3 of them in the top 10 at once, which was absolutely surreal. And I'm so glad it happened to me I'm kind of glad it happened to me in my 40s. Maybe it would have been nicer if it had happened in my 20s. But I think it made it a lot easier to deal with. Like, I look at people who have a massive smash first time out in their 20s, and I just think, great for you, but I don't know how you live with that if it then, I met at least one author who had a massive smash to start with, and then their second one didn't do as well, and they literally fall apart because they assume that that's how it goes. And I think you and I both know that it's so much to do with luck and timing and good covers. And I once had a book that was completely sunk, even though everybody had pitched it really very excited about it, because Rich and Judy brought their list out 3 weeks early, and it was like being run over by a juggernaut. Like, there was just no room in the shops for it, no one cared, and it just disappeared.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
Can I just say another thing while we're talking about journalism and novels? Because sitting in the audience is the woman who inspired me to write, which is Jilly Cooper. And when I was growing up, I would read Jilly's pieces in the Sunday Times.
Yes.
And it was really the first time I'd seen a woman being so funny and writing so sort of honestly and hilariously about life. And then I loved all Jilly's books when I was growing up. So, I mean, I think applause for Jilly.
Absolutely.
I love her. So there's such a history of journalism and novels. It's a natural progression, but it's never easy getting a book published.
No.
It really is.
Right. Who's got a question for us now? Oh, we've got lots. Let's go at the front here first.
Is there a book that you both wish that you'd written yourselves?
Oh, I can tell you a recent one. It really annoyed me because it was such a good idea and it was so brilliantly executed. I was feeling a bit down, and I asked a friend of mine for a recommendation of something that would cheer me up, and she said, there's a book called The Wedding People by Alison Esbach. And I started it, I thought, okay, and then it has a glorious twist within about 20 pages, and then it went the whole way along. I couldn't tell which way it was going. It was funny and charming and a bit sad and a bit poignant, and I'm really, really annoyed that I didn't write it.
And I would say, well, obviously Pride and Prejudice, but in a way I've already stolen that. But the one that actually that I'm currently considering trying to steal is The Great Gatsby. Ooh. And the thing that makes me feel inadequate about that is that it is so beautifully actually written. I mean, apart from all the other things he does, like the world he creates and the characters and the meaning of it. Because I think with books, the thing that elevates a book and makes it last beyond its few years is, what is it actually about? And that is about the failure of the American dream, the failure of thinking wealth will solve things. But the things that he says in his little descriptions of people are so precise and intricate. And I try to copy him, but I've done this before. I wrote my first novel, Cause Célèbre, was reading Ernest Hemingway. And there's a whole chapter that turns into Ernest Hemingway. So there's like this frothy, girly writing, and then suddenly it gets all muscular and male, and then it goes back to me again. So I think you have to be careful getting infatuated by other writers. But yeah, sometimes you just look at someone's work and you think, I could never do that.
Yeah.
Now, we had a question that was just behind you, I think.
the actors that were cast in both the film, that, you know, you've both had films, if you didn't like someone, do you have any say on it? And do you like the characters that were cast?
I can tell you my version of this, which was, we're not allowed to say, it's not good form to say who didn't get the part, but there were some very interesting A-list auditions from people who just clearly hadn't understood the book. When I got sent videos of what's called chemistry reads, so they get, like they had a final 3 men and a final 3 women, and then they put them together and get them to do key scenes. And I remember I was working in Paris doing something, and I was sitting in a cafe, and I watched the scene between Sam Claflin and Emilia Clarke doing what became the big beach scene, where she tries to tell him what he means to her, and he rejects it. Sorry if that's a spoiler. It is 12, 15 years old. And I started crying in this cafe watching this video. And I messaged MGM, who were doing it, and I said, I only have one couple. They'd asked for my top 3. I said, I just really love Sam Claflin and Emilia Clarke. And they went, oh, thank God, because that's the only one we're looking at too. And so it was really easy, because we both felt exactly the same way. Oh, do you? That's so nice. Thank you.
What about you, Helen?
Well, I love the actors in Bridget. I mean, it's so sweet now, because it's been such a long time. It's 25 or 30 years. Hugh, I mean, he just is the character. You know that scene where Bridget's wearing the mummy pants, and he's seducing her, and she suddenly remembers. And it was Hugh's ad lib. He just went, oh, don't worry, I'm wearing something rather similar myself. And then he went, oh, mummy.
Yeah.
So I love Hugh. He's incredibly loyal. He's so naughty, but he's a very good writer as well as an actor. So what I do is I sort of sketch out his part and then send him some email, which is like something out of Are You Being Served, saying, if you'd like me to help you enlarge your part, I'm very willing to do it. But he sort of does all the writing. Colin, obviously, I was madly in love with, and I wrote Mark Darcy as Mr. Darcy, as Colin, and they were all mixed up together. And Renée is she is Bridget. When I first wrote it, I could only see the girl on the cover of the book, who we both know, but as soon as she came along, I saw her, and she's quite like Bridget in the way that she's sort of fluffy around the edges, but actually she's very perceptive and smart. We do get into sort of Bridget situations, like on the last film, we both liked Leo Woodall, who was cast as the younger man, and I was really excited about meeting him, and we were talking to each other, and then I got my hair stuck on Renée's microphone. And so we were like stuck together, and then Leo came around the corner, we were like, hi. So I think they're just great, and it's like a family, and I think it's quite unusual to go back so long with this weird thing where we've all got these alter egos and stuff, but there's a huge amount of, and Celia Imrie, who's here this weekend, she's been playing Una for all that time. So it was very emotional this time, all being back together again, you know.
Backstage earlier, I asked Helen, is there going to be another one? And she said no. So I feel like we need to collectively persuade.
I mean, the thing is with Bridget that if you say it's a franchise usually has like wizards or stuff blowing up or superheroes, things like that. There isn't anything except her perspective, one woman's perspective, really. So unless it's one of those stories that just bubbles up and it's real, and you were going to tell it anyway, which is what happened with Mad About the Boy. It wasn't even a Bridget book. And then it sort of turned into one. I wouldn't do it because it wouldn't feel real. You know what I mean? It would have to come from somewhere true. Something wouldn't have to happen or something.
Let's make something true happen in
What
in
now?
life. Another question. Right down here in the aisle.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask, do you actually have a favourite book that you've written, or are all your books a bit like children? You have to love them all the same, but maybe with a little bit of difference in them?
Fires of Zanzibar for me.
The Giver of Stars for me. I mean, obviously, I owe everything to Me Before You because that book changed my life and my family's life and everything. But the one that kind of that contains everything I care about and everything I felt passionately about, and kind of, it felt like, sorry, this sounds so pretentious. It just felt like giving birth. I couldn't write anything for about a year afterwards, and a director friend of mine said to me, well, no wonder, because you literally birthed that book. Like, I would write it in 5 a.m. in the morning, and I lived in Kentucky to do it, and I just, it's the best, I mean, I shouldn't say this because my agent's here, but I think it's the best thing I will ever have written. I'll try, but sorry, Sheila. Oh, thank you.
Helen, a favourite Bridget?
I just said five. Oh, a favourite Bridget. I don't know, actually. I mean, I think the first one, because it was so unself-conscious. You know, I can remember sitting with all the columns on the floor, panicking, obviously late for the deadline as usual, and they're like, where's the book? And I'm doing it. And the end of it, if you read the end of that book, it's utter chaos. It's like a sort of pantomime with people running around, policemen coming in and out of doors and things, because I was in such a rush. But it was a very authentic piece of work. And then I think Mad About the Boy, I think there's probably the screenplay is better than the book because it's tighter, but it was very heartfelt. And I think also where the first one was about the image of the single woman in her 30s, this is about the image of the older woman. And fiction is always so slow to catch up with reality. And what I see around me, this stereotype of the older woman is not what we all are. Life doesn't change. People don't stop having sex and having fun and having the same friends and the same, you know, wearing nice clothes and being funny and vibrant and viable. It's a myth that's forced on us by society. So I really wanted to sort of skewer that, and especially enjoyed doing it by Bridget having a younger lover, played by Leo Woodall in the film. And there was a line that actually got cut out of the film, but the smug marrieds again were torturing Bridget and saying, come on, it's been 4 years now. It's very hard for women of a certain age to find a man and everything. And then she turns up at this party with Leo Woodall, and they go, oh, is that your nephew? And then he goes, no, that would be a very odd relationship. And they cut that line out, but I think it's just addressing the balance. You know, this imbalance between the perception of men at an age that's older than 40 and women, and it's just false and it's outdated, and we need to get rid of all that nonsense.
Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, come on, I don't believe it. Someone must have a question. No? Well done.
I do, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Hello, I'm a stage manager at Don't Exist. With both of you having had screen adaptations of your work, we were talking earlier about whether you like the actors or not. For once you've had that adaptation and you write another book with that character, does that then mean that when you're writing, in your head, you now see those actors that are portraying those roles, or do you still see the original version of that character in your head? I.e., when you're writing Bridget, are you seeing Renée in your head, or are you seeing your original version of Bridget from the very beginning?
Well, I always saw Colin / Clarke / Mr. Darcy, so that's easy. Yes, I do completely see Renée and completely see Hugh. The other characters, if I bring in new characters, then it's different. But yeah, I do. It's great.
Yeah, same for me. But also, I never picture my characters physically when I'm writing them. Very rare occasions, but I mostly kind of picture them internally, if that makes sense.
So
I have a.
interesting.
Do you as well?
No.
Oh.
No, I mean, I write in the first person, so I don't see the person writing, but I do completely picture the characters. That's so
I never do.
interesting.
And then what happened with Me Before You is once I saw Sam and Emilia, they became so embedded in my head I couldn't remember my old versions. And yes, I used their little lovely faces endlessly to write the next two and the short story.
That's so interesting.
Aw.
Yeah.
We could carry on chatting for hours. Unfortunately, we can't. Jojo is going to be chatting to the legendary Dame Jilly Cooper in here in a bit. And Helen is going to be heading out to our book signing tent. So please do pop along and get your book signed and have a chat with Helen. And thank you so much for being such a brilliant audience. I hope you've had a wonderful time today. And we look forward to seeing you soon.